Hi, I'm Jeff Rouse at Art Story Studios, and look who stopped by to see me.
Ned Koppen, President of the Fairmont Area Chamber of Commerce.
So glad you stopped by. And you know what? We just got done shooting another episode of Martin County on TV. Would you like to see that?
That'd be great.
Let's do it now. John, welcome aboard. So glad you stopped by. Of course, I know what you do and who you are, but share with the folks who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks for having me. My name's John Duderstadt. I own Replay Video Games, Electronics, and More here in downtown Fairmont.
Wonderful. Now, this is a fairly new business here in town that I know some people are very excited about. Can you tell us a little bit of how it all began and how you got into this business?
Well, we opened in October of 2018, but a video game store is always kind of on my bucket list.
Okay.
I thought it'd be something fun to do.
Yeah.
It's something Fairmont doesn't have. It's something that within an hour drive, you can't find anything like this. But it more came down to the opportunity, having a place to do it.
Sure.
And then, of course, timing. Timing's everything. And the opportunity to rent the space at next door to Gemini Studios came about. And
that's awesome. So are you I'm an old guy, so bear with me. Are you an old or a long-time gamer? Is that what the word I should be using? Gamer? Yep. So you had a big interest in this before?
Oh yeah, for probably over 15 years I've collected video games all the way back from the Atari on up. So,
okay.
And then even the old stuff like the Commodore 64s and the old computer-based programming stuff like that is interesting.
You know, what you're talking about there, I'm going to have to take your word for it. Because I don't know what you're talking about. But I'm sure the gamers and the young people watching are going to know what you're talking about.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them, that's right. Tell us about the inventory, what people can expect to see when they come in.
It's hard to say what to expect because we get stuff traded in daily. Our inventory is I do order stuff, but most of our inventory is based on buy, sell, and trade.
Oh, really? Okay.
So you have something in the attic that's been sitting there for 10 years and you're cleaning it out and you want to get rid of it, you can bring it down and you can sell it to me. I'll buy cash or buy it with cash, or I can trade it in for store credit.
Sure.
And that typically keeps the flow different and changes daily.
So people can come in and buy, sell, or trade.
Correct.
Good. Very cool.
So they want to buy the next best system out there and they have the last generation or two of the last generations and they want to trade up, essentially.
Okay.
They can do that. So,
do you find a certain age bracket that normally is your customer, or does it vary?
It actually varies a lot. Around here, it's a lot of the younger kids, the newer generation stuff, and of course, there's always the battle of nowadays with everything being digital or online. But there's a lot of people in their 30s or 40s, around my age, that have the nostalgia factor.
Sure.
They grew up on it. And you can't buy it anymore. It's not for sale. It's not a new product. So the only way to get it is on the used market, And so we get in all this new product, and we spend hours cleaning, testing, going through everything, making sure it all works properly. And I think that's a lot of it.
So does some of these old systems, again, being an old timer myself and a long time antique collectors, do these become valuable or just desired because they are an old system?
Yeah, there's some of it that is valuable. Some of it's hard because someone will come in and they grew up playing this Atari, and they found it in Grandma's attic, and so they put a value on it, And your personal value is going to be different from what the market value is. There's literally millions of different games out there. So there's many sought after, hard to find games, consoles. A lot of it has to do with if it was a limited run game, or sometimes if the game was so unpopular that it didn't sell.
Oh, sure.
There's less copies out there, which today makes it more
valuable,
right.
Just like an antique would be.
So it's all over the place.
So now, if I came into the store and I said to you, I had a Pong game when I was 20 or 19 or whatever. I would love to have that again for nostalgia. Is that even a possibility?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, we have Pong consoles still in the box.
That's a riot. With as much as all this advanced, because that Pong was very high tech.
Oh yeah.
Bong, bong, bong. But we enjoyed it.
Right. So, I remember playing it when I was a kid.
There you go. John, we do a segment called Martin County Flashback that shows some of the things that have been filmed here in town over the last 25 years. Would you like to see one of those?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, it's time for
Martin County on TV Flashback. Now it's time to bring us back into the present with one of our current reporters, Lenny Tvedten. Over the summertime, he interviewed Bruce Burton, who was the grandson of a famous Fairmontian. Let's hear what Lenny Tvedten has with this week's History Moment.
This is Lenny Tvedten of the Martin County Historical Society. One of the more interesting individuals in the history of Fairmont is Lenny Burton. He arrived here in the late 1800s, probably around the 1870s. He eloped with Sally Whirland, Captain Frederick Whirland's daughter. And looking at Captain Whirland, that must have been a pretty brave thing to do, I guess I would say. He did a number of things around here. He farmed. He tried horse trading, fur trapping. As I understand it, from what I've read, people often took advantage of him. He ended up broke. At one point, he returned to England. Then he came back here. He also kept a zoo. He filed for Register of Deeds in 1909, finally being elected in 1927. So I guess persistence pays off. Today we're fortunate enough to have his great-grandson, Bruce Burton, visiting in Fairmont, and I'll be visiting with him about Lenny and what he remembers and knows about him. So Bruce, I guess, you know, what can you tell us about Lenny from what you've heard and know about him?
Well, he's a family character, and everybody knew about him. In the 1870s, about 1870 in fact, two of his older brothers came out from England, bought a bunch of land out on Rose Lake, and homesteaded. And then Lenny was the youngest in the family, got kicked out of Baden-Baden Military School, where he was going to school with Kaiser Wilhelm. And the family owned some property in Germany, and his branch was sent over there to keep out of the rest of the families here. So then Lenny was shipped over here. And he joined in homesteading on Rose Lake with his two brothers, Graham and Jim. Lenny, Jim, and Jim's son, younger Jim, are all buried out here in Lakeside Cemetery. The younger Jim was only 92 when he died, and had the funeral here in Fairmont about a year ago. He had gone to school here in Fairmont until his father passed away. And at that point, his mom, who was English, took him back to England to be raised as an Englishman. He wound up being superintendent of, well, he was a Scotland Yard guy, and he wound up his career being superintendent of all the police in Yorkshire. And then retired and gambled around the world and had a good time. He was Montgomery's chief of police as well. Good guy, and he came back here to visit frequently. And in fact, a bunch of his classmates from Old Central School and wherever the high school was in those ancient days.
Sure.
Had a big get-together for him back in the 80s when he was here once, and took him out in a big boat and had a class reunion sort of, and stuff like that. So the families had a lot of deep ties to this place. But the Englishmen were all disasters as farmers. I mean, it wasn't just the Archer Burtons, the three boys. They wasted their money on a lot of stuff. They didn't know how to farm. You know, they weren't German farmers. They were Englishmen who were
kind of what's written in history. They had a lot of hard luck, which maybe they brought on themselves.
A lot of it they brought on themselves. In part, it was the locust plague and so forth. But Captain Whirland and 7, 8, 9 of his kids came over here. The Gim family here in town are descendants of those folks. And Lenny and the oldest Whirland girl, Sally, eloped.
Right.
In the 1870s sometime. Had a bunch of kids.
And at that time, from what I read, Captain Whirland lived over toward Winnebago?
Yeah, he was living on a farm, and Captain Whirland was a very intimidating guy. He had been a merchant marine captain for a very large company that sailed out of Liverpool, Southampton.
Big beard and fairly stern?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, his dad had been a doctor in Cork, and the street where he practiced medicine in the early 1800s is named Whirland Street.
Oh,
and the old cottage where, you know, doctors all had their offices in their homes in those days.
Sure.
He was raised by a very repressive, strict Irish father.
Okay.
So going to sea is pretty understandable.
Getting away from everything, probably.
Getting away from everything. Anyway, they got married. They had a brood of kids. I think there were, well, maybe 10 of them. And I think 8 lived to adulthood, 2 girls, and the rest were boys that lived to adulthood, and they all became area businessmen or married people. The Gilbert Hotel, that's that old beat-up joint out here, was once a really grand hotel, and one of the girls that Lenny and Sally had married a Gilbert, and they were the Gilberts from Vaughn Gilbert and Harry Gilbert and some other brothers who came over from Wisconsin and did a lot of investing in this area back in, you know, the 1910s and 20s and 30s.
Where did their children all end up?
Oh, they're scattered all over the country. Her Majesty's Royal Stationer has a book published in 1960, and I've got a copy now, that was given to me by Richard Constable, who were cousins of the Constables, the great English landscaper, John Constable. And so we were over visiting last year, and he gave me a copy of the book. The Royal Stationer says that the Archibald's all died out, and he said he discovered obituaries as recently as a couple of years ago in the London Times and said, they can't be died out. And he called around. They said, well, call Bruce in America because he knows where the American ones are. They're scattered all over. I mean, they're all over the place.
Okay.
I think we had about 40 cousins, American cousins, attend that funeral last summer. So there's a lot of them, and gosh knows there's probably others that are married and I've lost track of, you know. But the roots in Fairmont run pretty deep. My wife and I are both Fairmonters and come back frequently. My kids love to come back here and visit where all their grandparents and cousins were. And, you know, it's had a pal of mine who's been a successful writer and published about 40 books. Tommy Disher was a Fairmonter. And Tom told me one time he had moved away when he was 13 and hadn't been back. And Tom said he rented a car. He was invited to come and teach at the University of Minnesota for a semester, a creative writing course. He got in the car, drove down here immediately, drove into Rhodes Park. It was early June. He got out, he looked around, and he said, my God, it's true. He said, it's right out of Walt Disney, and I hadn't realized it was this gorgeous. He'd remembered it that way, but then going to live in tough areas in New York City and things, you know.
Yeah, I've communicated with him several times. We had an author display about 2 years ago, and he sent a number of books, and talked with him, and I found his website and everything, too.
Nice guy.
So, Lenny kind of marched to a different drummer.
Yeah, Lenny marched to a different drummer. He was what they call a remitterman. Now, a remitterman is when they take the primogeniture, meant the oldest boy got everything and the others got whatever was handed out to them. So all the younger brothers were given money periodically, and they would go off to Australia or America or something to make their fortunes and then come back to one of the estates in England, mainly to say hi to mom and dad and the grandparents and grab another bag of money. And
sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, wouldn't we love that today? Lenny would go back, he'd get his money, as the others would. He'd come back here, and he had this huge family, but he let Sally be the one who was really raising him. I mean, he was a disaster as a farmer.
Kind of a vagabond almost, you know?
Kind of a vagabond, but he loved animals. He had brothers who were naturalists.
He had a zoo then, too, didn't he?
Had a zoo. They had that Constable blood in them. They were all very good hand artists. It was just a hereditary thing from the John Constable side. And what he did was he would take his money and he would buy elephants, tigers, whatever it was. A guy named Arthur Nelson used to run the Sentinel.
Right.
Okay, well, they were our next door neighbors, Arthur and Sadie. And where the Sentinel is now was a different building in the early days. But Lenny ordered an anaconda from South America, about a 20-footer. And it finally arrives, and the stage depot was right down there. So he calls all his friends around. He knew everybody, and he was always hanging around downtown and, you know, BSing with all the guys. And they look at this giant anaconda in there, and then they go off to have a beer or whatever they went off to do that afternoon. They came back much later, and some little kid had unlatched the deal. No. The anaconda had crawled out. It was a long wooden crate that had air holes in it. They crawled out and vanished. They looked and looked for it, couldn't find it. Well, in those days, this was a dry county. But everybody knew that the bootleggers were over and welcome. So they start hearing these reports that they'd been seen in the ditch, that giant snake. But it was always on the way back from welcome.
Yeah, sure.
And they finally found it because somebody smelled something. I think it was Arthur Nelson, Major Nelson. I think he was in the Spanish-American War or something because he had a big head wound. He was always called Major. It was stuck between Major's building and the next building over. It had crawled between the buildings and couldn't get out and had died there. It had probably been loose for 5 minutes, but for a whole year it was terrorizing Martin County. I mean, if a farmer said he saw the snake, later on they knew that he'd been out on the tractor. Or out with
getting
horses.
a little bit, huh?
Yeah, getting a little bit.
Well, in reading the, I guess the obituary when Lenny passed away in the 1937 newspaper, a lot of people really spoke very highly of him. So he must have been, even though he was kind of marched to a different drummer, he must have been well respected by people.
Very
around
popular. He just didn't chase the buck. He let his wife do that. I mean, he'd go over and get family money when he could.
Apparently, he must have been very friendly, well liked by everyone.
Well liked. I know that I think it was Arthur or Claude Swanson, one of the two fellows from the Sentinel, wrote about him years later when I was a grade school kid, I guess.
Sure.
And said that he had this booming voice, and he'd walk into the room and he used the old English vocabulary. He'd call them, "How are you doing, chaps and laddies," and things like that. You know, very friendly, very gregarious, and a very determined politician. And so he
must have been. Took him about 18 years.
Took him about 18, 20 years to get himself elected.
Right.
Register of deeds. And basically, I think he sat around on his butt using his beautiful penmanship that he learned in various schools. He was, because he'd been educated in Germany as well as England, he was fluent in both languages. His older brother Jim eventually inherited the estates. John Constable, the painter, had died young, and they had taken the widow in and all of his kids. And the family estate over in England was filled with Constable paintings because Constable wouldn't sell his own stuff. So his widow would sell off a couple things just to pay her share and stuff. And when the Blitz was going on, Churchill sent out word to hide all the artwork. And it was hidden in caves and stuff. And the last of the Archer Burton boys was in the manor in Southampton when it was blitzed. He died of his wounds. And I was told last year there's no accounting for many of the big pieces of the artwork. Whether it had gotten to caves or haymouths or wherever they could, England thought it was going to be invaded and that Hitler was coming.
Sure.
So the English ones are saying, gosh, if we could only find that. I mean, they're worth a couple $1,000,000 a hit.
Yeah.
The American side of all the people I've talked to have the attitude, look, after a generation or so, this is public property. It doesn't belong to some guy's
individual.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bruce, thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Lenny, I enjoyed your article. It was just charming.
Well, thank you.
And it evoked all those old memories I kind of forgot.
Well, good. It's very, very interesting to hear about Lenny Burton from somebody that knows firsthand, so to speak. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lenny.
This is Lenny Tvedten for Hometown Focus.
Martin County on TV Flashback.
Well, that was really interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what other things do you offer and to the public through your store?
A lot of times we'll get someone that comes in and they have the original Nintendo from 1986 and it won't play the cartridges anymore. You know, we can do minor repairs, we can clean out your systems. You might have a disc that won't play anymore. We have a disc repair machine there, so we can buff out your discs.
Oh, okay.
Aside from services, we also offer some electronics as far as cabling, connectors, adapters, stuff like that, as well as a selection of musical equipment from guitar strings, reeds, stuff like that. And then we do tournaments.
Tournaments?
We do tournaments. We try to do tournaments at least once a month. It's usually a Saturday night. It's a good way to get the kids out, get them out to do something.
Sure, absolutely.
You always hear there's, what's there to do outside, or outside of the house. And
right.
So we try to get kids to come down.
So tell me a little bit about the tournaments. What happens at a tournament?
A tournament will be, we usually put like an online or on Facebook, we'll put a question of like, here's 5 different games, what would you like to play? And we'll get people to vote on it. And then whoever gets the most votes, we'll set up a tournament. Everyone will come down on a Saturday, we'll give out prizes to the first, second, third place winners.
So these individuals compete with each other on these video games?
Yep.
Well, that's got to be fun.
Yeah, we got 2 65-inch flat screen TVs up there, so we'll play, Super Smash Brothers or a racing game or something like that, and have brackets set up and everything. And so yeah, it's just a good way for the community to get together and the kids to get out. And
now, could an old guy like me show up and
everybody's invited?
Get beat badly by those kids at some of these games?
I tell you what, I couldn't beat these kids at these games, so
that's awesome.
Why I don't play them.
Well, what a fun thing for the kids to do and interact with other kids.
That's the whole thing. I want people to be able to come down and they can play a game, they can test it out before they want to make a purchase. Sure. They can try out a different system maybe they've never played before. They've just heard about it,
Absolutely. So. I'll bet you have a Facebook page.
Oh yeah, definitely. We have a Facebook page, so you can check us out on Facebook. That's where you'll find all our sales and upcoming events, stuff like that.
Pictures of systems and
Yep,
and
pictures
the
of
place.
inventory. You'll find videos from our tournaments, stuff like that.
Well, you know, when I've been up and down Main Street walking by your store, looks very inviting. Your windows look like, wow, there's stuff happening in there. That's really cool.
Yeah,
So,
it's fun. I have like an old Zenith TV.
Oh yeah, and I relate.
But I'd put an old Nintendo game up there so people can see that. And one of my favorite things to do is, I got this old Zenith TV, and you turn it on, you can hear that buzz.
Oh, of course.
I have these kids going, "What is that noise?" And I put Pong on there, and they're going, "You play this?"
They're just shocked.
Right? They're all used to their tablets and their.
Oh yeah, yes, that was high tech. And believe it or not, when that first came out, that was pretty high tech.
Oh yeah,
you could play that right on your TV.
Right.
It was just amazing.
Technology is always changing. It's hard to keep up with it.
I'm sure. So if somebody wants to stop by, give you a call or have a question on Facebook, you welcome that, or just stop in and see the place.
Yeah, you can call us anytime. Message us on Facebook. Otherwise, we're open Tuesday through Thursday from noon to 7, and then Friday and Saturday noon to 9.
Very good. Hey, John, I want to thank you very much. It's
Thank
fun
you.
to show a new business that entertains and supports the kids having fun.
Thank you.
Joining me today is Chad.
Hey,
Welcome
good to be
to
here.
Our Story Studios.
Good to be here.
Chad, share with the folks who you are and what you do.
I am a lawn care company here based out of Fairmont. We predominantly service fertilizer programs with weed control. And we'll talk a little bit later about how that's evolved. But we've been doing lawn care work since 2008.
Wow.
Purchased the business from a local company here in town, a local family here in town.
Awesome. So share with the folks how this has evolved when you say you started in 2008. Tell us a little bit more about how it was then and how it is today.
Well, back in 2008, I got a phone call from a classmate of mine. His dad passed away, so they were looking at moving the business along, and it was an opportunity, so I took it, and been moving forward ever since. And we started with about 200 fertilizing and spray clients, and we've more than doubled that since then. So that's been good. And as we were doing that, you get one person to ask you to mow their lawn, and the longer I've done this, the more I realize that a good lawn, there's more to it than just fertilizing and spraying for weeds. So if you mow at the proper height, that makes a big difference on the health of your lawn. So that's kind of why I got into the mowing part, because of, I don't want to say dissatisfied customers, but customers wondering why their lawn wasn't as nice as they
Totally
felt it
taking
should.
care of all their lawn needs
Correct.
in every
Correct.
aspect. Very cool.
So then we got into the mowing part, and then with that also that kind of led into us servicing some irrigation work, because if you don't water it properly, it creates issues with your lawn also. So we started saying, if we can take care of your irrigation, we can make sure it gets watered properly to give you the best lawn possible. And then, of course, the key to any business is good employees, especially around small business. So in order to keep my key employees around, we started snow removal,
Oh, so now you keep them year round and do the whole
We do
package.
the whole package,
Wow.
yes. So it has evolved quite a bit, and it all based on giving everybody the best lawn possible. That's our focus, that's our goal, and all of it kind of comes together. And I tell everybody all the time, it's a three-piece system, if you want to call it that. It's obviously us. It's 33% as far as the program, as far as the weed control and the fertilizer. It's proper mowing height. If you're not mowing at 3 inches or higher, you're putting a deficit to your lawn. And Mother Nature, giving your lawn an inch of water a week. That's kind of what the standards are, so that's what we shoot for.
Sure. Tell me, you mentioned employees. How many employees do you have?
We have 5 full-time employees right now, so yep, it's kind of growing, and that's where the snow removal comes in. So some years are better than others when it comes to snow, but yeah, the last 2 years have been pretty rough, but this year's been welcome light year, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely.
So,
So, Chad, I know you're a Fairmont person, grew up in Fairmont. Share with the folks a little bit about you personally as far as family and such.
yeah, I graduated here in Fairmont and been living here all my life. And I've got 3 kids, a wonderful wife, and yeah, I got a senior this year.
Senior?
Yep. So we're going through that, and yeah, I love this town.
Chad, I'm assuming you have some programs and some plans that people can take advantage of?
We do, and you know, that's one of the things that it's really evolved into is packaging it all together. We have property maintenance, lawn care, and snow removal packages. So a year-round package, or you can do just I call it the growing season package. You know, from April, depending
Sure.
on the weather, to the time it first snows. But we package it all together and divide it by 7. So back to the month, you know, we'll say a monthly payment. And it works real well for people because those that are on a budget, they know what they're going to spend every month.
That's
for
awesome,
everything,
yeah.
you know. So because, you know, a couple years when the snow's heavy, you know, they don't like getting that $600-700 a month snow bill to where they know their set fees. So we contract, I'm going to say all but 2 or 3 people
Really?
for the season. So everything's contracted. It's simple. It's easy. It works well for me because I can budget. It works well for them because
Well,
they can
and
budget.
as a person who would use it, how nice to know that it's just taken care of. You don't have to worry about your lawn. You don't have to worry about your snow removal. You don't have to worry about the grass is growing or not growing and
Right.
weeds and such. That has to be a tremendous asset to anyone that owns a home.
Obviously, our goal is to give you the best curb appeal we can, you know. So when we do this, you know, I'll just give you our typical rundown for the season. When we do a property maintenance packages, first thing we do is go out, pick up any leaves that were left over from the fall. So we go through the lawn, clean it up, clean out the landscape, make sure everything's nice and clean, and then we can start with our lawn care program. And then we just go on a monthly mowing, trimming cycle, you know, maintenance, yeah, just the typical mow. We also take care of the details. That's what I think we come in and offer a little bit more service than some of the other companies might, is we make sure that there's no weeds growing in the cracks of your sidewalks and your driveways. We trim the shrubs in your landscape. We take care of that twice a year. So in the spring and the fall, we make sure that that's taken care of.
Now, are all these custom, obviously, because some people have shrubs, some people have large yards. You come out, you give them an idea what this would be or will be as far as cost,
Yes,
correct?
I quote it every year. I send out a new contract and give them the opportunity to add, subtract, change, do what have you, and works really well. Like I said, I've got a lot of people that are taking advantage of it, and it works well for both parties. And that way we got the guaranteed work and they got the guaranteed cost, so it works really well. So that's how the program has evolved, and it keeps growing every year because they like that they don't have to call 4 or 5 different people to take care of the services we do. We just take care of it, you know. Ask how many homeowners have cut a cord on an electric hedge trimmer.
Absolutely.
So I hear that story quite a bit,
I'm
you know.
sure.
So they don't have to worry about that. But, you know, part of the package too is freeing up some garage space. I always tell everybody I could free up a single stall garage space with the services we offer. You will not need that stuff anymore.
So tell me, Chad, difficulties. Are there projects that turn into bigger, or people have more needs that you need to help with?
There is. You know, the biggest call we get about is bad areas in the lawn. You know, every lawn isn't. I mean, you look at the football field. Everybody wants a football field or a baseball field or like their golf course, right?
Yep.
And I'll use the golf course as an example. If you go in the rough out into the trees, the lawn's usually not pretty good underneath the trees, right? So it's kind of the same thing at your house. There's a couple streets here in town that are full of maple trees. We all love our maple trees because they change leaves, they look beautiful. But at the end of the day, it is very difficult to get grass to grow under a maple tree just because they're so dense, the shade. So any heavy shaded areas cause problems. You know, the tree roots are so close to the surface, they're taking all the nutrients and the water from the turf itself. I've also got some areas that between fences and trees and houses, there's no airflow, so you get a lot of moss growing, and it never dries out,
Sure.
so it causes moss to grow. And at the end of the day, there's also, the soils are just poor. We do a lot of soil samples, send them to the lab, and everybody's pH is high and missing micronutrients, so in our programs, we try to add some of that stuff back in our everyday program. But if you really want to move that process along, there's we do a lot of individual programs and put products on based on what the soil sample says. So,
Well, just from what you said right there with these problems you're addressing, makes it even more appealing to have a service that can take care of all these issues.
yeah, it's nice to be right around the corner.
Absolutely. And now you're right here in town.
We are right here
So
in town.
I'm sure you have a website, Facebook, and the like.
We do. You
Okay.
can look us up anytime.
And they'll find pictures of projects and what's going on and different things.
We are. Mike's been taking care of that and does a real good job with
It's
it.
become a big part of our life.
It has.
It's how to maintain this,
It
not
has.
even have it, but to
has.
maintain and put it together.
It has. And I'd like to just say thanks to all the clients that have supported me and my company for the last, since 2008. So, and we'll continue to strive to do our best for you and do what we can.
Well, we're proud to have you on the show, a local business doing well and serving our community. Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, another episode of Martin County on TV. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we welcome you to tune in again. Thank our sponsors for making this happen, and remember, it's not just the past, but the present that tells our story.